نحمده ونصلي على رسوله الكريم أما بعد. Today inshallah we'll start this short treatise or a letter which is called Ayyuhal Walad, which is written by Imam Al-Ghazali rahmatullah alayh to one of his advanced students. And before we begin, we should look at our intention. Innamal a'malu bin niyat. Actions are judged by intentions. And our niyat should be that we want to read one of this letter that was written by one of the great mujaddid, one of the great ulama, awliya, mujaddid of this ummah, Imam Ghazali rahmatullah alayh. And we want to learn from his ilm, from his advice, from his experience. And like I said to you last time, that this letter he wrote at the end of his life. So this letter is actually his spiritual last testament, his last nasihat or last will that he is giving to his students. So he's summarizing. We should imagine that one of the great personalities of this ummah, he's going to summarize for us this khulasa or the essence or the take home lessons from his life, those take home lessons which every student of knowledge should try to practice, and at the very least, we should know. These are lifelong lessons, essential lessons given by one of the masters of this tradition to a student of knowledge, student of sacred knowledge. So we should think as if Imam Ghazali rahmatullah is addressing us. We should take it, we should read this personally, as if these instructions or as if these guidance or what he's saying that is specific to me, and what lessons I can take from this. How can this apply to me in the sense of how I can draw myself close to Allah. And the second reason is that we also want to get the barakah of reciting this risala, of going through this letter. And for Husul barakah, that by reading these words that were penned down by Imam Ghazali rahmatullah alayh, we can get tawfiq to do more amal in our own deen. And then thirdly, we want to understand using this letter, this dimension, this field of Islamic spirituality more, and learn what is the training to get a behind the scenes look at the system of training, what goes on between a teacher and a student. So inshallah, we start and we should make a dua here. This is what uh, we do in madrasa before we begin a book. We make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Any book, any dini book, we make dua to Allah ta'ala that Rabbi yassir wa la tu'assir wa tammim bil khair. Wa bika nasta'een ya fatah, ya fatah, ya fatah. And I'll repeat this, and all of you can repeat this on your own. Rabbi yassir wala tu'assir wa tammim bil khair wa bika nasta'in ya Fattah, ya Fattah, ya Fattah. Rabbi, O my Lord, yassir, make this easy for me. Wala tu'assir, don't make this difficult for me. Wa tammim bil khair, enable me that I can complete this book with khair, with goodness. Wa bika nasta'in, and seek help from you and you alone, Ya Allah. Ya Fattah, you are that being who opens up the chest of a person for this ilm. Ya Fattah, Ya Fattah. And we should also make dua at this point for the author of this book, Imam Ghazali Rahmatullah alayh, and for all those people through whom we receive this book, the people who translated, the publisher, the editors, all of those people who are in that process through which we are now benefiting, and we have this book in front of us. We should make dua for them in our heart. That may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give them the best of rewards, the reward that is befitting according to His own shan. Inshallah, you have the Arabic in front of you, so from time to time I will also, if there are certain words which are better understood in Arabic, I will look at the Arabic. But for the most part, we will look at the English translation, do a translation, and then a commentary about those things which need to be explained. I've said to you before that this is a more advanced type of literature, which is written by Imam Ghazali to one of his advanced students. It's not an introduction or an elementary book. It's this person whom this letter is written to is also going to be an advanced student of sacred knowledge. So we're on the first page, first paragraph. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wal aqibatu lil muttaqeen. والصلاة والسلام على نبيه محمد وآله أجمعين. This is the standard khutbah that you will find in many books and in all of our dini books, books that pertain to sacred knowledge. Those books, they begin with a khutbah, and in that khutbah, the author starts with the Bismillah, and you start with Bismillah. This is an aspect of the written works and even verbal lectures in the Islamic tradition. And this goes without saying that you want to start any work, be it religious or even worldly, we start with the name of Allah Ta'ala, which means that one is invoking the attention of Allah Ta'ala, the mercy of Allah, before any action he or she does. And that is why this is also a form of a zikr. This is also a form of remembering Allah Ta'ala. Zikr, it's a general type that a person remembers Allah Ta'ala in their heart. And when a person remembers Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this is going to be a source of barakah in that work that one is about to start. In a hadith, the Prophet ﷺ said that before you begin any work, you should say Bismillah, Rahman, Rahim. And that work which does not begin with Bismillah, then it is deprived of the barakah. So whether we practically do any amal, or even when you're writing something or teaching something or orally giving a lecture, the the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, the sunnah is that a person should recite by saying Bismillah Rahmanir Rahim in order to attract the barakah from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then after Bismillah, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, we praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala And we praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for all the blessings that Allah has given us. And in a hadith, the Prophet ﷺ directed us that we should, when you begin anything, you should say the hamd of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So both things are mentioned. Tasmiyah, Bismillah, and Alhamdulillah. And the ulama, they have their own reasons, and they have some disagreements whether one should recite only Bismillah. Some say only Bismillah, some say only Alhamdulillah. But a way you can do tatbiq, you can reconcile all the different opinions about this, is if you can recite both Bismillah and Alhamdulillah. So this is a preferable way. By reciting Bismillah and Alhamdulillah, a person can follow the preferred way in which there is no difference of opinion, and a person can do amal on all the ahadith mubarakah that are mentioned in different books of hadith. And even in Surah Fatiha, when we begin, we start with Alhamdulillah. So this is a very good habit, that any task, any work that we do practically, whether it's religious or worldly, or even when you're writing anything, we should begin. You can orally say Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. وَالْعَاقِبَةُ لِلْمُتَّقِينَ. And the outcome belongs to the muttaqin. This is an ayat of the Quran. So first two you already know, there's no need for me to explain. Bismillah, in the name of Allah, who is all merciful, all mercy giving. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. All praise itself, every kind of praise belongs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who is the Lord of the worlds. وَالْعَاقِبَةُ لِلْمُتَّقِينَ. This is an ayat of the Quran, that the aqibat, which is akhirat, that good outcome in akhirah, it belongs for those who are the muttaqin, those who are pious, those who are, the translator says, God conscious. Muttaqin literally means that a person abstains from the sins, refrains from sins, and the reason why they do so is because of consciousness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this awareness of Allah, this love of Allah and the fear of Allah. And out of these feelings of the love, fear, and awareness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as a result of that, a person, they stay away from sins. So taqwa is not the name of doing something. Taqwa is actually the name of not doing something, not sinning, and being on the safe side, staying away, staying safe from sins. And among the several benefits that are mentioned in the Quran about taqwa, there are many benefits which are mentioned, that a person gets many things in the dunya. For example, there is barakah in the rizq of a person. Allah makes the task easy for that person in this world. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala increases the reward of the ibadah for the muttaqi. Allah protects that person from his enemies, from those who are planning and plotting against him. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grants him his love in this world. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grants kubuliya to that person, accepts the dua of the muttaqi. There are several benefits that a person gets when they have this sifat of taqwa in this dunya. And among the benefits of akhirah, one of the several benefits is that wal aqibatu, that good outcome in akhirah, that belongs only to the muttaqin, for those who abstain from sin out of this awareness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yani taqwa is a word that combines together all the goodness that is there in this world and all the goodness that is there in akhirah. If there was one sifat, one attribute that you would see recurring so frequently in the Quran, almost after every few pages, there is this word that you will see coming up. That is this word taqwa. And it's a word, it's a sifat, it's an attribute that if a person can get, it combines all the khair. In fact, there is a hadith by the Prophet ﷺ said the same thing, that individual who has taqwa, they combine all the khair, whether it pertains to the dunya, yani the needs of the dunya, the wants, the desires of this dunya, they are fulfilled by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And in the same way, all the khair that is in akhirah, all the goodness that is in akhirah, the ranks in akhirah, they're also for those people who have taqwa. So this is a master attribute, a master sifat that all of us should try to attain. We should make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for this. There are several du'as that the Prophet has taught us. وَجَعَلْنَا لِلْمُتَّقِينَ إِمَامًا. This is a Quranic dua that Allah make me the Imam of the Muttaqeen. Allahumma inni as'aluka al-huda wa-tuqa wal-afafa wal-ghina. Allah, I ask you for hidayat and taqwa. So we should make this a constant part of our dua, asking Allah Ta'ala for taqwa and also trying as much as possible to acquire those means which will help us attain this ni'mat of taqwa. Like Allah says in Quran, وَكُونُوا مَعَ الصَّادِقِينَ يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا اتَّقُوا اللَّهَ, to have taqwa. And then one way that Allah mentions in this ayat is وَكُونُوا مَعَ الصَّادِقِينَ, that put yourself in the company of those who are righteous, who are pious, who are more truthful than you in their deen. If you put yourself in their company, that's another easy way through which a person can attain taqwa. And then after this, in the khutbah, we have the salawat and the durood on the Prophet ﷺ. وَالصَّلَاةُ وَالسَّلَامُ عَلَى نَبِيِّهِ مُحَمَّدٍ وَآلِهِ أَجْمَعِينَ. Normally, there are three words that come in different ahadith mubarakah. As-salah, number two, as-salam, and number three, al-barakat. As-salat means blessings. Was-salam means peace. And al-barakat means, again, barakah, but normally this is also translated as blessings. Was-salat would mean more those blessings which are the mercies of Allah. So was-salatu was-salamu. Here you only have two things, two words that are mentioned, and the author has done so because of ikhtisar, because of shortening. And any case, when a person should recite durood on the Prophet ﷺ, we should try to recite that durood which has all three words in it: as-salatu, as-salamu, and al-barakat. And one very short durood which has all three of them is the following: Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala ali Sayyidina Muhammad wa barik wa sallim. So you have the salawat, and then at the end you have the wabarik, barakat, wasallim, and salam. So this is a short durood which combines the three words together, those three words which are mentioned in several ahadith mubarakah. Now sending durood and salawat on the Prophet ﷺ is also a standard practice in our deen, and the reason is because if we send durood and salawat on the Prophet ﷺ, this is also a source of blessings, also a source of getting barakah in our activity, and it's a source of getting mercies from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The Prophet ﷺ said that whosoever recites one durood upon me, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala showers upon him 10 of his mercies, 10 of his blessings. So we should try to recite as much durood as possible. And this is also a reminder that every work that a person should do, they should try to do it as close as possible to the way of the sunnah, because that is the acceptable way, the makbul way in the sight of Allah. So here in the khutbah, this is the basic adab, which is expected from any practicing Muslim, even though unfortunately it's rarely practiced today in our contemporary society. But this is the standard practice of our ulama, of the awliya, of the sulaha. And even today in the Islamic tradition, when you begin any lecture, when you write anything dini and your religious treatise, you begin with this basic adab where you say Bismillah, Alhamdulillah, and you send durood and salawat on the Prophet ﷺ. And again, it's not simply basic, it's not simply some kind of a ritual or routine that a person does, but rather there is a significance behind that. And I've explained that to you, that this is the way of attracting the attention, the mercy, and the blessings from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So it's not just to be supposed to be taken that a person does this habitually as a sense of out of routine. Rather, there is a great faida and a benefit here. There is a great faida and a benefit that a person is able to fill that activity with barakah. And barakah, what is barakah? This word keeps on coming. So let me explain it here. Barakah in Arabic language means that you begin an activity, and then you are able to complete that activity in such a way that you were able to fulfill the purpose of that activity. Any activity that you want to start, any task that you're doing, any work that you're doing, it has a goal. You want to achieve something. You want to there is a purpose to it. And if you're able to, and sometimes it happens that you spend so much time and effort and sometimes so many months and so many years doing something or writing something or working upon something, but at the end you're not able to attain to that goal. You are not able to attain that purpose. So that would be an activity which is wasted, that you made such an effort, but you did not get the fruit of that effort. So in that situation, we say that that activity, that work, that effort that we did, it lacked barakah. It lacks barakah, that a person was not able to attain their goal, the purpose of that task. So barakah means then that you make an effort and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala puts his special help and mercy and blessings on it, so much so that you are able to attain your goal, that whatever task that you were doing, you were able to complete it. And not only you were able to complete it, but you were able to complete it in the most efficient way, in such a way that not only you attained your goal, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accepted it and Allah ta'ala made it beneficial for other people. Allah extended the benefit of that activity to your own being and also extended that benefit to other people around you. So barakah is that you do a task with the blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So sometimes you have barakah in something which apparently is very small, very less. I'll give you an example. Standard example is money. That you get some money and you have, if you are blessed with barakah, then that little money will become sufficient for your needs and for your wants and your desires. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will put so much barakah in that money that you can use it to fulfill your needs and desires. And on the other hand, there might be a person who has a lot of wealth, a kasrat, but they lack barakah. And lacking barakah means that they may not be able to attain to their goals, attain to their needs. Maybe they keep, they want more and more, and their zaruriyat or their desires and needs are such that whatever they have, even though it's so much, but it's not enough for them. So we should always make dua to Allah Ta'ala for barakah. And we should also learn those ways through which a person can attract barakah. And this is it. This is why this is not simply some routine activity. There is a depth, there is a message that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving us, that if you have this adab in your life, then because of this adab of reciting Bismillah, Alhamdulillah, and Durood and Salawat, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will fill your life and make it barakat, full of blessings. Then after that, it says, اعلم أن واحدا من الطلبة المتقدمين لازم خدمة الشيخ الإمام زين الدين حجة الإسلام أبي حامد بن محمد الغزالي رحمه الله تعالى. Know that one of the advanced students devoted himself to the service of the master, the Imam, the ornament of religion and proof of Islam, Abu Hamid ibn Muhammad al-Ghazali. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless his soul, or may Allah ta'ala sanctify his spirit. And occupied himself with the acquisition and study of knowledge under him until he mastered the details of the sciences and filled out the good qualities of the soul. So here it seems that this first this is like a preface which has been inserted by maybe the editor, maybe some other student, because this person is saying that one of the advanced students devoted himself to Imam Ghazali. So it's not that advanced student himself, it's not his own words, but someone else, right? So you have three people here. You have Imam Ghazali, then you have this advanced student, which is being mentioned here, who wrote down a letter to Imam Ghazali requesting for some nasihat. And then you have this third person here who is just writing this like an editor and sort of just editing the preface here and giving us the context that you have Imam Ghazali, and Imam Ghazali had advanced students. One of those advanced students who had devoted himself to the khidmat of Imam Ghazali, and he wrote down this letter. So who is this editor who's writing these lines here? We don't know. And it's just the first page. This first page is written by that editor. We don't know his identity. However, it's these lines are helpful because they help us understand the context in which this letter is written, and we can now look at the content, that what is the context here. So the first thing that he's mentioning here is that one of the advanced students, so it's not some beginner like I mentioned to you, he is going to be an advanced student of ilm, of sacred knowledge, and he is someone who has devoted himself to the service of the master. Again, the word master sometimes in English can rub you the wrong way. If you look at the Arabic, it says khidmat al-shaykh. The word is shaykh, right? And the shaykh, I've explained to you in the last series that we were doing, that shaykh means like a mentor on this path of drawing close to Allah, or a teacher, or a coach, or a counselor, or and I've explained to you different ways, like a gardener. And so this person had was learning, was in the khidmat of the sheikh, and the khidmat is also very important. And this has been the way in which a person learns sacred knowledge in our deen, not simply through coming in for one session and then going, but rather ilm was transferred from chest to chest, and that required a taluk, a connection, a rabata between the teacher and the student. And many times it would happen that the students would come and they would try to spend some time in the company of their teacher, and in that company they would assist their teacher. They would ask if there is any task they can do for the teacher, help them. And their niyat would be they're doing it for the rada of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the teacher would, as a result, sometimes make dua for their students. And it's because of those students, the du'as that the teacher would make, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would accept those du'as in the haqq, in the favor of those students, and Allah will grant qubuliyah to the students. This is the model that we see in the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. I've mentioned this many times that the Sahaba Ikram, and especially the young Sahaba Ikram, those Sahaba who came and who devoted themselves to the khidmat of the Prophet ﷺ. For example, it comes, there were about three Abdullahs, Abdullah ibn Umar radiallahu an, Abdullah ibn Abbas, and Abdullah ibn Mas'ud radiallahu ta'ala anhum. These were three students of the Prophet ﷺ who were not just students of ilm, who were not just learning ilm formally from the Prophet ﷺ, but at the same time, they took upon themselves this task of helping and assisting the Prophet ﷺ in their daily mundane activities of the day. For example, bringing water so that the Prophet ﷺ could make wudu, or for example, accompanying the Prophet ﷺ on some journey and assisting the Prophet ﷺ in different ways. So these three Sahaba, it's mentioned particularly, that they would try to compete with each other in trying to learn ilm deen, but also at the same time in trying to be of service, trying to be of help, trying to be of khidmat as much as possible to the Prophet Sallallahu. And the Prophet Sallallahu, khidmat has its own barakah. And the Prophet Sallallahu, at the time of tahajjud, he would then make special dua for these three students, for the three Abdullahs. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accepted the du'as of the Prophet ﷺ in favor of his students. And all three of them, every single one of them, they went on and became the Imam of their respective field. Abdullah ibn Umar, he became Imam of Hadith. He is today known as Imamul Muhaddisin, rahimahullah, radiyallahu ta'ala an. Imam Abdullah ibn Abbas radiallahu ta'ala an, today he is known as Imamul Mufassirin, as the leader of the Mufassirun, the Quran commentators. And likewise, Abdullah ibn Masud radiallahu ta'ala an, he became Imamul Fuqaha, Imam of the jurists. So getting du'as from your teacher in deen, this is a source of getting barakah in your own ilm, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then accepts such students for the khidmat of deen. That is why there's the du'as of the teacher of deen is very important in our deen, in our tradition, Islamic tradition. Because when a student, they get the du'as of their shaykh, of their teachers in deen, then because of those du'as, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grants kubuliya to that student, and Allah puts barakah in the ilm of that student. And then what barakah means is that the fairs of that student, it extends. Their ilmi benefit, it extends, and other people are able to benefit from that student. Imam Bukhari rahmatullah alayh, Imam Abu Hanifa rahmatullah alayh, Imam Shafi rahmatullah alayh, all of them, any one of them, when you read their biographies, you will see that how much khidmat they did of their teachers. That's the whole topic in itself, how much khidmat service, how devoted they were to their teachers. Imam Shafi rahmatullah alayh says that after every salah, I used to make dua for my teacher. That I used to make dua for my teacher. Imam Abu Hanifa rahmatullah alayh, similarly, other stories are mentioned, other anecdotes are mentioned about these imam, that how close relationship they had with their teachers, and how much they presented themselves before the teacher for khidmah. And it was then that khidmah, the barakah of khidmah, the du'as of the teacher, the tawajjuh, the attention of the teacher, and Allah accepted the students, and they went on to become imams in their own field. And now me and you and all of us, we benefit from their ilmi and ruhani fairs, from their ilmi and the insights that they've given us. So this is how a person gets kubuliya in deen, through the du'as and the khidmah of our teachers. And this is very important for us, as for all of us, we are students of ilm. We should remember that qubuliyat comes by being people who are khadim, by having this as our identity, that throughout our life we should try to be khidmat, try to do khidmat of our teachers. Hazrat Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu, he would say that if there is a person who has taught me even one word of deen, I am his slave for the rest of my life. That person has done ihsan upon me, a favor upon me. That person can tell me whatever he wants to do. I will present myself to him, and I will help him, I will serve him. Because he is my teacher, he has taught me ilm deen. This was the ihtaram and the adab of our akabarin. And that is why Allah Ta'ala gave them such kubuliyah. Man tawaza'a lillah, whoever lowers themselves for the sake of Allah, rafa'ahullah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then increases, elevates the rank of that person. So if we humble ourselves, if we have this, adopt this identity, this attitude of khidmah and khidmat of our teachers, of the ulama, awliya, of our mashayikh, then inshallah Allah Ta'ala will use us for ilm deen. This is our husn zan. We can hope, we can have husn zan in Allah, that Allah will inshallah use us, Allah will accept us for khidmat of deen. Then the second thing he mentions is he gives us an introduction about Imam Ghazali rahmatullah alayh, that this was a student who had devoted himself to the service of Shaykh Imam Ghazali rahmatullah alayh, and Imam Ghazali's title was Hujjatul Islam. Hujjatul Islam means proof of Islam. And the reason why he was known like this is because people used to look at him and they would say that if a person like Imam Ghazali rahmatullah alayh if he is a Muslim, if he is if his religion is Islam, then this religion Islam is haq. Then Islam is haq. And again, this goes back to the journey of Imam Ghazali rahmatullah alayh, which I mentioned last time, that how he was a seeker of truth and he delved into philosophy and looked at all the philosophical doctrines and then found how mistaken they were, identified their errors. Then after that, he went into different sects, the different claimants of truth, and he diagnosed, he dissected, he went through and attained a mastery about all the different sciences, all the different knowledges, all the claimants of truth who were there at that time in his zamana. And after doing this thorough study, he came out and he acquired this path of deen. And then he wrote down his autobiography, in which he describes that Al-Munkit min ad-Dalal. So in that it's a description, it's not a prescription. He's not prescribing that other people should also delve into all the philosophies and look and delve into all the different types of knowledges, information that are out there. He says, I've already done that task. And now after going through all of that, I've come to the conclusion, and my conclusion all of you should hear. And this is the reason why I'm writing to you this risala, his autobiography, is that my conclusion is that the truth, that haqq lies in following the way of the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. That all of blessings and all of nur and all of haqq, all of perfection and excellence lies in following the way of the Prophet ﷺ exactly and as precisely as possible. That was his ultimate conclusion. And he says there's no need for any individual to go and dive into all the things, but rather they can simply benefit from this conclusion, which is the summary of my years of traveling, my years of learning, and my years of inquiring. So as a result of that, then people called him as Hujjatul Islam, that people would look at him and say that if someone who has studied all the sciences, in our modern context means that you study all the philosophies, all the isms, all the sciences, and then after studying all of that, if someone comes up and says that Quran and Sunnah is haq, right? That is what Imam Ghazali rahmatullah did actually in his own time. That he was a master of the religious sciences and a master of the secular sciences. So no atheist could come up and say that you haven't studied this. He would say, I've studied your atheism and I've studied it better than you and better than any one of your teachers. And I've come to the realization that your atheism is wrong and these are the problems in it. That is really what exactly what Imam Ghazali rahmatullah did. And that's why he was known as a mujaddid, one of the reasons that he was known as the mujaddid of his era. So Hujjatul Islam. So the student, he had occupied himself with the acquisition and study of knowledge under him until he mastered the details of the science. So you can see he's not an elementary first, he's a master. He's sort of completed the formal curriculum of the religious sciences. and he's also filled out the good qualities of the soul. So not only does he have ilm, formal ilm, but it also indicates that the student, he has been doing his own tazkiyah. He has been trying to purify himself of blameworthy attributes, of improving his akhlaq, improving his character, removing the inner sins. He's working on that also. And in fact, not just working on that, uh, filled out, he's sort of reached some level there of his tazkiyah, of attaining good akhlaq. So he has, what we can say, he has some level of the outward, he knows the outward sciences of religion, and not just knows that, he has mastery about the outward sciences of deen, like the Quran, tafsir of Quran, hadith, commentaries of hadith, fiqh, usulul fiqh, Arabic language. He knows these outward sciences, he has a mastery of that. Plus the student has knowledge and has attained some maqam or rank in the inner sciences, in those sciences which pertain to the sciences of the heart, of purifying our heart and disciplining our soul. So he has been working on the outward and the inward, and he has attained a particular maqam or a rank in that. So, he is quite a high level. Maybe today you will say he's an alim already, right? He's someone who has been studying deen for several years now, and under the khidmat of Imam Ghazali and other ulama, wallahu alam, for several years now, and working on the outward and the inward. So he then comes up, and what happens? Then one day, and this is important, right? This is very important. He considered his situation, and it occurred to him that I've studied various kinds of sciences, and I've spent my life learning and mastering them. I now ought to find out which kind will be of use to me on the morrow. Yani, this is on akhirah. Ghada, tomorrow, right? Which sciences will be of benefit to me tomorrow? Yani, when I leave this world. Which sciences, which kind will be of use to me in my when I pass away, to keep me company in my grave? Which kind of learning will be helpful for me in my grave, and those which are not of use to me, so that I may give them up? Yani, the student, this advanced student, he wants to make a distinction. He wants to uh, find out that which knowledge will be of benefit to me in my akhirah, and which knowledge will not be of benefit to me in my akhirah. Acha, before this, you can see that this is reflecting the eagerness of this student. That the student is not simply content with being an academic, right? But he has this eagerness to perform good deeds. And the fact that he is asking that, look, I've studied all the various kinds of sciences, I've spent my life learning and mastering them, but now I need to know which will be beneficial for me in akhirat. So this is the notion here of knowledge which is going to be beneficial, which is going to help with that person progress and prosper on the path towards Allah's path, which is going to make his akhirat better. And there are multiple elements here which are important for us to realize. Number one is that our knowledge, the real knowledge that a person should get, is that knowledge which is going to be beneficial for their akhirah. And he quotes here a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, that the Prophet ﷺ, as he made dua, said, "Oh Allah, Allahumma a'udhu bika min ilmin la yanfa." Oh Allah, I seek refuge in you from that knowledge which is not useful. Acha. Now in this paragraph, I want to draw your attention to a number of things. Number one is the adab that the student has in addressing his teacher. So you can see that he is calling his teacher the honorable, with honorable lakab, right? The Imam, Hujjatul Islam, the ornament of religion. And then after that, he is also attaching a small dua. If you can look at the Arabic, Qaddasallahu ruhahu, that may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sanctify the ruh or the spirit of Imam Ghazali rahmatullah, which basically means that may Allah shower his mercy upon the ruh of Imam Ghazali rahmatullah. Sometimes you say rahimahullahu ta'ala, that may Allah send mercy, shower mercy on the ruh of the deceased. So the student, he has adab, he is making dua, and shows to you that the rank of the teacher is so high in the eyes of the student, and he has this respect for his teacher, and he is using the best of ways, best of words to address him. And the dua that he is making, this actually points to a broader tradition, which is actually a two-way nature, that the students, they make dua for their teacher, and the teacher, they also make dua for their students. This is the beauty of our deen, that both of them, it's a relationship which is built on the love for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and as a result, both of them, they're making dua for each other. And about such a relationship, the Prophet ﷺ said in a hadith that if there is a person who makes dua for his brother or for his sister, for his brother with behind his back, right? The person who's not present, someone who's absent, ghaib. So you make dua for that person behind his or her back, then Allah will accept the dua for him. So to pray for one's teacher or to pray for one's student privately in your khalwa, this is a sign that a person has sincerity, they have love for their teacher, and ultimately Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will accept the du'as. And so we should have this habit of making du'as for other people around us. And one of the benefits when you make dua for other people, whether your teachers or your people, especially from whom you have benefited in deen, is that when you make du'as for them, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, there is an angel which says, Walaka Ameen, that Allah grant him the same thing, and then the angel says Ameen. So we make du'as for other people, the angel says Ameen on our du'as. But the angel makes that same dua in our favor, and then the angel says Ameen to our dua. So subhanallah, when you make dua for someone, you will get the duas of the angel and the Ameen of the angel. So we should try as much as possible to become people of dua. This is what the Prophet ﷺ has taught us in our deen, and this was the sunnah of Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam. So the student now, this thought came to him that I want to understand that which knowledge will be of benefit to me in akhirah, and which knowledge will not be of benefit to me in akhirah. In a hadith, it's mentioned that al-ilmu nurun, that ilm is light. And Mufti Azam, Mufti Muhammad Shafi rahmatullah alayh, he explained this in a very beautiful way, that ilm is that nur, it's that light which when enters the heart of the student, that student cannot resist until he does amal on that ilm. So real ilm in our deen or ilm nafi is that ilm which makes a person do amal. And they do amal out of ikhlas. They do amal in order to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So ilm nafi is that ilm which makes a person act. And they act in order to attain the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is called ilm. This is the definition of ilm nafi. And this ilm nafi is precisely what the Prophet ﷺ made dua for. Allahumma inni as'aluka ilman nafi'an. That Allah, I seek from you that knowledge which is beneficial. And the Prophet ﷺ sought refuge. Allahumma inni a'udhu bika min ilmin la yanfa. That Allah, I seek refuge in you from that knowledge which is of no benefit whatsoever. So both things are mentioned. So this is an ilm, and when a person, remember, when a person gets ilm nafi, then they get tawfiq to do amal on that ilm, and then as a reward, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala further increases that person's knowledge. We did this last time, in the last year, that one of the signs of ilm nafi is that when you get this ilm and you do amal on that ilm, Allah Ta'ala will further increase you in knowledge. Allah will give you knowledge of those things which you did not have before. In a hadith, the Prophet ﷺ said that when you act, man amila lima alima, when you act on those things which you know, then Allah will make you heirs, make you waris of those things which you don't know. Then Allah will, in other words, will further increase you in your knowledge, things that you don't know. Allah will give it to you. This is called ilm ladunni, ilm which comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala min janibillah, that Allah will inspire your heart with the deeper meanings. Allah will inspire your heart with hidayah. Allah will maybe open up multiple layers of what you're reading. Allah will maybe grant you a new angle through which you can understand. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will further increase you in your knowledge. One way of increasing knowledge is that you have a very good memory and you read and you write and you make notes. All of that is fine. But the basis of that is your akal and your intellect. And this is a very weak foundation to have. A stronger foundation in order to increase our knowledge of deen is, that's also zaruri. It's necessary that you work and practice and do takrar and mutalla and try to take notes. All of that is important. Don't misunderstand me or misquote me. What I'm saying is that another stronger foundation of furthering our knowledge is to do amal on what we know. Because the Prophet ﷺ said that whoever does amal on whatever they know, then Allah will give them knowledge. And when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us knowledge, that knowledge is coming from Allah. So that is surely going to be beneficial knowledge. It's going to be ilm nafi. There's no way anyone can stop that knowledge. That knowledge is not dependent on how sharp or how dumb a person is. That knowledge is not dependent on a person's memory. That knowledge is coming from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah inspires the heart. Allah opens up the heart, grants shara sadr to the heart of such a person. So we need to become people of amal. Make amal the bunyad, the foundation. This is the foundation of ilm nafi. This is one thing. And I will also mention to you a second way through which a person can attain ilm nafi. In Quran, Allah Ta'ala gives us the second way. And the second way is taqwa. Wattaqullah wa yu'allimukumullah. Then have taqwa wa yu'allimukumullah. Allah will give you knowledge. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will instruct you. Yani, in other words, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will become your teacher. Allah will teach you, will guide you.
will increase you in further knowledge. And I've already explained to you what taqwa is. So these are two ways. One, I mentioned a hadith, and the second, I mentioned to you the ayat of the Quran. Two ways in which a person can get beneficial knowledge. That knowledge which has a strong basis in our deen. One is doing amal, good amal on things that you already know, and second is becoming a person of taqwa. So we should try to increase in both of these things so that whatever ilm we get is ilm nafi, that ilm which is coming from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala directly. And if Khuda na khasta, God forbid, if a person doesn't do amal on their ilm, then their example is like a donkey. And this is also becoming, Imam Ghazali Rahmatullah will explain that a person like a donkey has a lot of weight on its shoulder, on its back, on a burden, but it's not able to benefit. So we don't want to uh, go on that path where a person has a knows a lot, but we are not able to benefit from that. May Allah Ta'ala save all of us from that. May Allah Ta'ala grant all of us this ilm nafi and save us from that ilm which is of no benefit to us. So this was the thought that came in the mind of this student. And the the editor again he continues this narration that this thought persisted to the point that he wrote to the honorable master the proof of Islam. Again, you can see how the adab that he's respect using. Muhammad Al-Ghazali, rahimahullahu ta'ala, again making dua, seeking a ruling, asking question, and requesting both advice and a dua. So you see here that this is the adab of the student, this advanced student, that he not only is addressing his teacher with adab, after that he is also showing his humility, his ajizi, asking a question and then requesting both advice but also dua. This is unfortunately an adab which we are losing very quickly. That in our madrasa we see that alhamdulillah, if you in our madaris, this tradition has continued. The students every time every time they meet their teacher and they benefit from their teacher, and then the gathering ends. So they make a request to their teacher. The teacher, remember us in your du'as. That, oh, our teacher, please remember us. Please remember us in your special du'as. Please remember us in your makbul du'as. Please remember us in du'as at the special times. This is the adab that we should have of requesting du'as. And this is an adab that is again the part of the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. The Prophet ﷺ once said, Umar radiallahu ta'ala an, he was going to perform Umrah. And Nabi salatu wasalam came to him and said that, Umar, that please remember us in your du'as. Please remember us in your du'as. Yani this was ta'aleem ummat. Nabi salatu wasalam teaching that a person should request their teachers to make dua for them. So the proper adab is on the part of a student to make request to their teacher that please make dua for us and display humility, to display ajizi, humbleness. And I've explained to you, humbleness is very important. Humbleness before our teachers is our duty. Humbleness before our teachers is our duty. Humbleness with our colleagues, people who are at the same level as us, that is courtesy. And humbleness with those who are junior to us, humility with those who are junior to us, that is nobility. That is nobility. But in all three of this, whether we are showing humility before our teachers, which is our duty, which is part of our adab, or we are showing humility before our colleagues, which is courtesy, or we are showing humility before our juniors, which is nobility. In all three of these things, our niyat should be lillah and for Allah. Why? Because the Prophet ﷺ said, Man tawaza'a lillah. It should not be linnafsi, that a person lowers himself because of their nafs, because to act as if meto, I'm such a humble person. Sometimes this becomes a person's identity, that I am, I am. Uh, this is nafs is very, very deceptive. So we are not doing this for the sake of our nafs. We are doing this because of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because Allah loves this sifat of humility. So we acquire humility lillah for the sake of Allah, not for the sake even the hadith mentions that if you acquire humility, Allah will raise you up. So our niyat, however, should not be that I want to get that rafat, I want to get that raise and izzat from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That again is insincerity. That again is not doing it for the sake of Allah. We are doing it for the sake of fame. And we're doing it for the sake of name and getting izzat in the dunya. That's not lillah. Lillah means that a person acquires humility for the sake of Allah alone, only Allah. That we realize our ubudiyah before Allah. We reflect on our relationship with Allah. Ya Allah, you are my Rabb, I am your abd. And it befits an abd to have humility. This is what ubudiyat is. It is befitting for me that being your abd, Ya Allah, that I should be humble. And for this reason, Ya Allah, I'm humble. So my humility, this humility should derive from a person's ubudiyat, being an abd and a servant and a slave of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And also we should remember, we have mentioned this before also, that humility and having adab towards our teachers, the teacher itself, the teachers, the ulama, the awliya, the mashayikh, these are from the sha'airullah. Allah says in Quran that you do ta'zeem of sha'airullah. And whoever does ta'zeem means that whoever shows respect to the sha'air of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then min taqwil qulub. This is from the taqwa of that person. That only who has taqwa, such a person will do ta'zeem of the sha'air of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What are the sha'air of Allah? Sha'air means the signs of Allah. Those things which you look at, they remind you of Allah. These are the glorious manifestations and signs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on this earth. For example, Baytullah. Baytullah Sharif is amongst the sha'air of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Similarly, Safa and Marwa. Inna Safa wal Marwata min sha'airullah. Min sha'airillah. Safa, Marwa. And likewise, Sayyidina Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Sha'airullah. And then al-ulama warasatul anbiya. The warasa of the Prophet sallallahu, the ulama, sulaha, awliya of this ummah, they are also included amongst the sha'airullah. And to have adab and respect towards them, this is a nishani, a sign of taqwa. So we can work on this backwards, that if a person wants to increase in their taqwa, They can try to get that sign in their heart. We can try to practice this until we get the hakikat, the reality of that true adab in our heart. So that is why asking the teacher for dua. Sometimes a person's heart maybe is not into it, but you have to sometimes work. We have to work on this. That we have to try to get this humility and humbleness, this tawazu in our heart. Amma Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha, she says, she was referring to the, after the passing away of the Prophet ﷺ, she would look at the people around her, the Sahaba and the other Tabi'een especially, and they would say, and she would say that you have lost one of the best acts of worship. I don't see one of the best acts of worship among you. And people asked that, what is that best act of worship? And she said, humility, at-tawazu. And we did this last time in our IST, that the first knowledge, first ilm that would be taken away from this ummah. Remember that we mentioned that how ilm will be taken away. In one hadith it mentions that the ulama will be taken away. You will have the kitab, you will have the Quran, you will have hadiths, you will have all these shuruhat and all these tafasir. But the ulama will be taken away, and that is how ilm will be taken away. And in the second hadith, the Prophet ﷺ said that the first type of ilm which will be taken away from my ummah is humility, is tawazu. You will enter the Jame Masjid and you will see people talking like tongues of Anbiya. They will be saying things like the statements of the Anbiya alayhi salatu wasalam. But in their heart, they will be lacking ajizi. They will be lacking humility. They'll be lacking tawazu. So we should, coming back, we should have this habit of requesting our teachers, especially of deen, for making dua for us. We should make this dua for request for dua for to our parents also. That's a separate topic. And the adab is to make a request for dua. Not to say that I make dua for you also. That sounds a bit arrogant. So from the student side, we should try to simply make a request for dua, and on our own we can make dua for our teachers in our own salah, after salah. But we should avoid mentioning that, because that again shows a bit of lacking adab or respect. Anyway. So the student, he requests both advice and a prayer. And then he says that even though the works of the master, such as, again, the works of the Shaykh, such as the revival of the Ihya Ulumuddin, the revival of the religious learnings, Ihya Ulumuddin, and others contain the answers to my question, what I want is for the Shaykh to write down what I need in a few pages to be with me for the rest of my life. And I will act in accordance with what is in them during my term if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wills. And so the Shaykh wrote him this message in reply. Wallahu alam. Okay, so this advanced student, he is writing to his Shaykh, Imam Ghazali rahmatullah alayh, and he in that letter or in that request, he says that even though the works of my Shaykh such as Ihya Ulumuddin and others, they contain the answers to my question. Now Ihya Ulumuddin, I think I mentioned last time, is one of the masterpiece collection writing of Imam Ghazali, which itself has 40 volumes. And in English, this is translated as the revival of the religious learnings. and they're written in Arabic. And gradually, I think a lot of these volumes have been translated into English. And inshallah, we'll be studying some of these volumes in this course also with you. So he says that I have read Ihya Ulumuddin, these 40 volumes. However, he wanted essence. He wanted what you call the summary, the and he wanted in a few pages something which he could keep with him for the rest of his life. And secondly, he says that not only will I keep it, but I will stick with it. I will act in accordance with it during my term if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will. So he's committed to this path. He is sincere, he's dedicated, and he just wants some basic, some summary teachings that which he can stick for the rest of his life. And this is now the barakah of the sa'il, of the questioner. And he's saying, I'm not just asking your advice for some intellectual curiosity. I plan to stick to it. Initially, people have this question that why isn't Quran Sunnah enough? The student could have just gone to Quran Sunnah and just looked at Quran Sunnah, and that would have been enough. That would have given you all the answers that you want, whatever essence and summary and whatever you're saying that I want to stick with it for the rest of my life, that would have been enough. Why write to Imam Ghazali and ask him? And in fact, if you see Imam Ghazali, he will answer this in multiple ways, but you will see one of the things he will say is that precisely that if you have the Quran and Sunnah, then you don't need my reply. He's going to say that. But if you, but also another way you can look at this question, that why is he making this question, is because he is an advanced student and he has read the Quran. He's a master, and himself he has mastered the details of the Quran and the Sunnah. But if you study the Deen, you realize it's a very, very vast literature. And then if you add the tafsir of the Quran, you add the shuruhat, the commentaries of hadith, then becomes very, very vast. So sometimes these people, they would want like a concise and practical, some essential manual for them to live by. And these days, it's very easy to understand. You have these books which are called short introduction to different topics. There's a series published by Oxford University Press, or even by Cambridge, where they have these topics like if someone doesn't know what is, let's say, Marxism. So they have like a short introduction to Marxism. About 40 pages, they give you the summary of Marxism. Or feminism, short introduction to feminism, short introduction to political theory, short introduction to Hegel or Plato or Aristotle. You can spend your whole life studying Plato and Aristotle. That's in depth. Read all their works. But sometimes if someone wants a short, brief, essential manual, right? So that is what sometimes even in Deen people would want. That we have studied everything, now we just want some concise and a practical manual. Practical, something which is going to give us beneficial knowledge, real knowledge, right? Knowledge that will be beneficial for us when we depart. So this was the barakah of the questioner. And now as a result of this, فَكَتَبَ الشَّيْخُ, the Shaykh wrote him this message in reply. And now if you turn to the next page, so the last line we did, فَكَتَبَ الشَّيْخُ, the Shaykh wrote him this risala, هذه رسالة إليه في جوابه, as a reply. So I've mentioned to you that a lot of these treatises and risalas and letters, they're actually written in response to the questioner. And this is what we call the barakatus sa'il, that the questioner and their question has so much barakah that a lot of books and treatises have been written in response to that question. And now we have those teachings available with us and we can benefit. So you see, this student's question he asked this question with so much. I just want you to reflect on this, that he is a student who asked this question with so much sincerity and so much ikhlas. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accepted that ikhlas, granted kubuliyah to the student so much that not only did Imam Ghazali wrote down this whole risala as a reply to that question of that questioner, but that reply was preserved by generations to come. And now in 2020, me and you, we are studying that risala and benefiting from the advice given by Imam Ghazali. And all of this was the barakah of the question of that questioner. So, in one sense, our studying and learning, this is all sadaqah jariyah for that questioner. Look at the incredible kubuliyah of that questioner. That whatever we read this, and if we do amal on any one of these teachings, the sawab will go all the way back to Imam Ghazali and then back to the student who asked the question to Imam Ghazali rahmatullah. That's why this ikhlas is so important in our deen. The smallest of amal, if you can do with ikhlas, with the greatest of ikhlas, then in the sight of Allah, it becomes very, very weighty. In physics, we say W equals to mg, that weight equals to mass times gravity. In the deen also, remember that our amal will be weighed on the day of judgment. And the amal, normally amal will be very simple, very mundane, very ordinary. But sometimes the ikhlas will be so much that small, ordinary looking amal will become so makbul in the Allah, that the name amal, that the scale of good deeds will become weighty, will become heavy. Look at this. Here, the amal is simply asking a question, such a small amal. That questioner is not writing some book, is not writing some tafsir of the Quran, is not writing some shuruhat of the hadith, is not writing some risala himself. What is his own amal? His own amal is simply asking a question. Allahu Akbar Kabira. Just a question. But the question was asked with so much ikhlas that Allah accepted that ikhlas. And this is a reminder to all of us that we need to purify our intention. Whenever you do any work of deen, and especially those who are now advanced students, who are about to, inshallah, for those who are acting on their deen, you act. In fact, even before you learn deen, your niyat should be Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You're doing it for Allah. You are learning ilm deen in order to learn the way in to draw close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You are learning ilm deen not to attain some worldly gain, not to get some worldly attention. We want to purify our niyat as much as possible. Try to work on your niyat as much as possible. Make your niyat only and solely for Allah. And then you will see how Allah will grant kubuliyat. How Allah will accept the smallest of amal. So we should, and then for those of us who are teaching ilm deen, for those of us who are to graduate in the second last year or last year, or are already teaching asbaq, we should always avoid, we should try to work, we should watch our niyat, lest any such thought comes to our heart that what are other people saying about me, how are other people praising me, and we begin to seek out pleasure in those things. We begin to seek out attention from other people and the praises of other people, and we intend to seek out the numbers, that how many people were there in that lecture, or how many people were listening to my lecture or to my bayan. So that spoils the niyat. That spoils the amal. That loses the barakah. The person loses kubuliya from that amal. So how fortunate will be those who work on their niyat and they are presenting to Allah small, small amal. It doesn't matter if there is one person in your class. If you can teach that one person with ikhlas, Allah will accept that one student, that one student. Through that one student, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will spread your ilmi benefit and fairs to the four corners of this world. To Yawm al-Qiyamah. Allahu Akbar Kabira. If you look at the story about the founding of Darul Ulum Deoband, one of the greatest madrasas in the last 200 years in our ummah, it started with one teacher having one student. That's it. One teacher having one student, and the teacher would teach his student under the shade of a tree. No building, no roof, no fan, nothing. And that teacher would teach all the subjects to that one student under the shade of a tree. Sahih Bukhari, Sahih Muslim, Jami Tirmidhi, Sunan Abi Dawud, Sunan Ibn Majah, all Sahasita, 6 books of hadith, teacher would teach under the shade of a tree to that one student. Allah accepted the ikhlas of that teacher, that one student went on to establish this madrasa, and then through that madrasa, the whole fez of that teacher, the ilmi, rohani fez, has now spread through the four corners of this world. And hardly there is any place in the world today where you will not find some student who have some nisbat with Darul Uloom Deoband. This is called ikhlas, the barakah of ikhlas. So we should not look at numbers. Whatever Allah Ta'ala has given us, whatever task Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is taking with us, whatever work of deen Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is using us for, we should do that work only for the sake of Allah. We should purify our niyat and try to increase our ikhlas. If we have ikhlas, then Allah will accept that amal. Allah will grant kubuliya to that amal.
Okay, we've completed our time for this session. So we'll inshallah keep it here. And we will resume inshallah next time. Again, we had to sort of explain to you the introduction, and that took us some time. Next time, inshallah, we will pick up some speed and try to complete a few pages, inshallah. Every class will try to complete a few pages so that we can finish this risala in a few weeks. Again, for those of you who haven't had a chance to go through this, you can use this time to go through the risala on your own. If there are any places which you're not able to understand, you can make a note, and if you like, you can email me beforehand, so that inshallah when we reach that particular place, I have your question in mind and I can answer your question while we comment on that particular passage. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant all of us the tawfiq to have ikhlas, to increase in our ikhlas, to have ikhlas in our ilm, to have ikhlas in our amal, to have ikhlas in every amal that we do. May Allah Ta'ala grant us this sifat and include our names amongst the mukhlisina lahuddin, those who make their entire deen only and solely, purely for the sake of Allah. This is one of those things, one of the long-term goals that every one of us should have. Two things we have studied today, and these are two lifelong goals, long-term objectives that all of us should have. Number one is taqwa. Taqwa is a lifelong goal. It's a long-term objective, long-term goal. We should, every dua, it's something which should be on our radar all the time. That I want to become a student. I want to become a person of taqwa. It's one of those words which we need to keep reminding ourselves every day. It's the master attribute, taqwa. And second thing is ikhlas. That I want to become among those people who are mukhlisin, muttaqeen and mukhlisin. Allah include me amongst the muttaqeen, and Allah include me amongst the mukhlisin. For those who can understand Arabic, they can make this dua. Allahumma ja'alni min al-muttaqina wal-mukhlisina. That Allah make me amongst the muttaqeen and amongst the mukhlisin. And in addition to these two things, there are two more things we should also make dua to Allah Ta'ala for. Number one is tawazu and ajazi, humility, adab. That Allah grant me this ni'mat of tawazu. Grant me, Allah, this attribute of humility. This adab, make me person of adab, a person of courtesy, a person of humility, a person of tawazu, to have this tawazu in every aspect of my life. And you see, this tawazu is linked with taqwa. وَمَنْ يُعَظِّمْ شَعَائِرَ اللَّهِ, that whoever has this ta'zeem of the sha'air of Allah, shows respect and adab towards the sha'air, the signs of Allah, then this is min taqwa al-qulub, it is from the taqwa of a person's heart. So it's related. Taqwa and tawazu, taqwa and adab, they're related to each other. So we should make dua. Sayyidina Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu, he would often make this dua to Allah ta'ala. Dua for tawazu. Allahumma ja'alni fi ayni saghira. That, oh Allah, make me small in my own eyes. Wa fi a'yunin nasi kabira. And make me big in the eyes of other people, so that other people can follow the nasiha that I give them. But the first part is his ajazi, that Allah make me small in my own eyes. So first thing is to have taqwa, ikhlas, tawazu, yani tawazu, adab, all of what we mentioned, adab towards our teacher, adab towards our books. And then fourth and the last thing is ilm nafi. Allah grant me that ilm which is beneficial. And we mentioned to you again, subhanallah, how does a person get ilm nafi? By doing amal on that ilm with ikhlas and taqwa. Wattaqullah yu'allimukumullah. So taqwa also helps a person get ilm nafi. That ilm which is ilm ladunni, where Allah Ta'ala is the teacher. Allah Ta'ala inspires the heart. Subhanallah, how beautiful would that ilm be, where the teacher is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant all of us that ilm nafi. May Allah Ta'ala grant all of us these four master attributes in our life. Wa akhiru da'wana and alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. If there are any questions that anyone wants to ask right now, inshallah, you can ask. One of you asked that how can we do khidmat of our teachers in online setting? There are several ways in which a person can do khidmat. Sometimes it's helpful to simply ask. We have learned this from our own teachers that sometimes we can just simply present ourselves and ask that if there's anything we can do for you, please let us know. Sometimes we can say that, is there, we are good with this. Sometimes people have expertise that I'm good with this computer science or making websites. And if there's any khidmat that we can do on that front, please let us know. We are good with so we present. Sometimes we know our skills and we can uh, make a request to teachers that please remember us whenever the time comes to assign some task of khidmat. Please remember us and choose us also so that we can also get this opportunity to do khidmah. So asking some we have learned is very helpful to be constantly on the radar of our teachers and present ourselves and be on the lookout in an opportunity. Then inshallah, Allah Ta'ala also creates opportunities. And sometimes, subhanAllah, we have also seen that when the student starts thinking on this line, we have never, our tarbiyat has not been done. We don't think. Unfortunately, the society that we live in is such where we level everyone down at our own level. We think that our teachers are like us at our level, and we unfortunately treat them in the same way. So first step is actually for us to have respect towards them, and then uh, to and after that, when a person has that jazba, their desire that I want to find some way in which I can do khidmah of my teachers, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we have seen, guides that student's heart. When you start thinking on those lines, that what can I do? How can I help? How can I assist? When you start thinking on that, when you have that mindset, so the main thing is to have that mindset, right? And if a person has that mindset, then when they start thinking on those lines, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guides that student. One of our teachers, Mufti Taqi Usmani Damat Barakatuh, he mentions that
he gave one of his lessons of hadith, and he was exiting the classroom, and one one student who was from one of the younger elementary classes, not an advanced student, but one of the classes which were elementary. That student came up and he called from behind the teacher and said, uh, Ustadji, yani Ustad means, oh my teacher, and Mufti Saab. So Sheikh Taqi Usmani Dhamad Barakah, he turned around and he said that I looked at him and I saw that he was a person, was a student from one of the younger class, one of the elementary classes, and that student, he took out 10 rupees from his pocket and he gave it to me and said that, Mufti, Mufti Saab, or Shaykh, I realize that you are very busy. You're a very busy man and you don't have time. And I'm also a student of Deen. I also don't have so much time, but I want to do some khidmat of yours. I want to serve you, and I'm giving you these 10 rupees. Uh, Please buy one chai for yourself from these 10 rupees and accept this hadiah from me. And Mufti Taqi Usmani Sahib, he says that those 10 rupees were given to me. They were given to me with so much ikhlas and sincerity. I still have those 10 rupees with me. I haven't used it. And no one, I haven't seen such a ikhlas before or after that incident in my life. So sometimes when you start thinking that how can I do khidmah, Allah Ta'ala inspires your heart and you can come up, and alhamdulillah, students, they come up with creative ways in which they can. And if you, subhanallah, I just remembered another thing which is mentioned in hadith. This was exactly the mindset of the Sahaba Ikram. Sahaba radiallahu ta'ala anhum ajma'in, it's mentioned in hadith Mubarakah that they would be thinking and that how can we do khidmah of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And one Sahabi, he says that he made an intention one morning that today I will do khidmat of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam in some way. And he started searching, looking that what is that thing which I can do to assist the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And then he picked up one task that was able to, in one way, he was able to serve the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. So the Sahaba Ikram also used to be thinking. It wasn't that the teacher would assign that do this or do that. The Sahaba Ikram, the Prophet ﷺ was very humble. Very humble. He wouldn't ask people, Sahaba Ikram, to do things for himself. Rather, the Sahaba Ikram would want to get an opportunity to serve the Prophet ﷺ. Like I mentioned to you, the three Abdullah, right? That they would be looking, searching, competing sometimes. That what can we can maybe give water to the Prophet ﷺ so that he can perform wudu. Sometimes they would accompany the Prophet ﷺ. Sometimes they would shade the Prophet ﷺ. So different ways the Sahaba Ikram would be constantly thinking, constantly reflecting on ways and opportunities to do khidmah. So anyway, the short answer is that a person can approach directly, or second is a person can start thinking on their own, and then Allah Ta'ala can guide a person's heart. Urdu terms of courtesy, nobility, and duty. Courtesy would be adab. The other two, I'm not sure. Duty would be amongst the farais.
nobility would be badapan, what you call in Urdu. What is the significance of keeping? So this is a question which will come, inshallah, later. Of significance of keeping aloof for oneself aloof for spirituality. Yes, that's completely permissible. This is the notion of khalwat, and it's something which is part of our deen, part of the sunnah of the Prophet Sallallahu. The Prophet Sallallahu would have khalwa, and there is khalwat which a person can practice in their life. But there is a lot of detail about that, inshallah, when the time comes at some point here in the Risala or somewhere else, we can explain to you. If a person has lost all the chances of khidmat of her shaykh, what should she? Istighfar and Tawbah. Where I can find the recording folders. Where can I find the recording folders for these classes? I think the admin will be able to help you. I'm not sure myself. How do you get ilm ladunni? I just answered that. Wasn't he studying beneficial knowledge to begin with? Since he was a student of the Imam, I explained that to you, that the intention would be beneficial knowledge. Sometimes it's actually not. It doesn't say that. Yeah, intention would be beneficial knowledge. Uh, Perhaps no. I think that from the context, it seems that he started learning, and at some point, he realized that I just need to now focus on that knowledge which is going to help me when I go in my grave. And this happens. Sometimes you start with the correct intention that you want to get beneficial knowledge, you want to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but as you study and then years pass by, and sometimes a person uh, maybe goes in different directions and perhaps become interested in those types of learning or that type of knowledge which may not be so beneficial. And then a moment of realization comes as a person grows old, and they realize that my death is imminent, and what preparations have I done for my grave? What am I taking? What will I take with me when I enter my grave? And then again, uh, uh, that at that moment, that recognition comes, and then a person starts again to introspect and feel that I need to focus. My time is limited, days are limited. I just need to spend every moment of my life in preparation for akhirah. And that seems to be now, in fact, that is the ishara. That seems to be the context, the situation of this student. That he is an advanced student, so he spent many years now, and now the student sort of comes to the realization that death is imminent, and I just need to spend every single moment of my life uh, preparing for akhirah. And every amal that I do should be a preparation for akhirah. So even ilm, uh, I just need to focus on that ilm which is going to help me in akhirah. Inshallah, I think a couple of you are asking about ways to do khidmah. I will ask Alim Sobyaji to maybe have a session on this with you about the virtues of khidmah and the importance of khidmah in our deen. And maybe she can answer this question better than I. And maybe she already has a series, I think Adab series. So in that Adab series, I think one of the lectures she can, I'll ask her, I'll request her to give a majlis or to give a lecture, inshallah, about this. Yeah, nobility can mean sharaf. Yeah, sharaf is also another shari. Azimat, azmat, right? Nobility. All right. So, Atika, your question about khalwat, inshallah, you should make a note of that. And then, inshallah, when the time comes, we'll try to explain that to you. Jazakumullah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.